The vacancy sign should not have been on. Stormwater hissed against the highway as Ethan's car rolled into the parking lot of the Willow Rest Motel, its red neon vacancy blinking in a slow, arrhythmic pulse, like an unsteady heartbeat. The lot was nearly empty, only 3 cars spaced with the wary distance of strangers at a wake. The lobby light burned a nicotine yellow, flat and sickly behind a glass door smudged with old handprints. Inside, the air smelled of wet dust and something faintly sweet, like syrup gone to mold. A small brass bell sat on the counter, its surface gnawed by fingerprints. When Ethan rang it, the sound felt swallowed as soon as it rose, as if the walls had been waiting with open mouths. A man appeared from the back office, thin, in a beige shirt a shade too close to his skin, smile stretched like a crease ironed into wax. His name tag was blank. He slid the registration book forward, its pages bloated by humidity. "Rough night to be out," the clerk said. His voice had no clear age. "Just one?" "Just me," Ethan replied, scribbling his name into the dense tangle of other signatures. A few of them overlapped, written over and across each other, as if people had been trying to insist they were there. The clerk watched the movement of Ethan's pen instead of his face. "You'll be in room 7. Quiet end of the row. She likes it that way." "She?" Ethan asked. "The room," the clerk said, as though it were obvious. Then, without looking, he reached beneath the counter and placed a tarnished key between them, the tag stamped with a crooked 7. Outside, the rain had turned the parking lot into a shallow, shimmering grave of reflections. Each neon blink fractured in the black water, stretching the word vacancy into something alien and segmented. Ethan followed the line of doors, past room 3 with its drawn curtains, past room 5 where the television glowed behind a warped shade, voices too muffled to belong to any channel. Room 7 waited at the end, a little removed from the others, its door painted a darker brown, the number slightly off-center, like a pupil that refused to align. The key turned with a gummy resistance, as though it were passing through layers of unseen fabric. When the deadbolt thudded back, Ethan felt it more in his chest than in his hand. The room smelled of old water and cheap cleaner that never quite won its battles. A single lamp bled amber light across a double bed, floral bedspreads swollen with patterns that seemed to shift when he didn't look directly at them. The walls were lined with faded wallpaper, vertical stripes of cream and beige, peeling at the seams like cracked lips. A large mirror faced the bed from across the room, set in a dark wood frame carved with twisting vines. The glass had a faint smokiness that swallowed detail. His reflection stared back a little softer, the corners of his face blurred. For a moment he had the odd sensation that something stood just behind his reflected shoulder, but when he turned, the real room was empty. He shrugged off the road, fatigue weighing down his limbs. Outside, thunder rolled away into the distance. Inside, silence pressed in, gentle and close, like something leaning in to listen. Sleep came only in thin, tearing strips. Ethan lay on the bed, fully clothed, the blanket rough against his palms. The lamp hummed weakly, its bulb casting a small, anxious circle. Beyond that circle, shadow knotted in the corners, dense enough to seem physical. The first time he nearly slept, the room breathed. It was subtle, walls exhaling, a faint crinkling, the whisper of drywall shifting in its skeleton. The air seemed to expand, then pull inward, like lungs filling slowly after a long hold. He told himself it was the building settling, the storm easing, but the rain had already faded to a distant hiss along the highway. He turned onto his side, facing the mirror. In its surface, the room's reflection appeared a beat behind, like a badly dubbed film. His own chest rose and fell, then rose and fell again in the glass, a fraction out of time. He blinked hard. The delay vanished, leaving only his drawn face and the smudged circle of the lamp. Softly, the wallpaper whispered. It was the sound of fingertips brushing paper, of nails dragging gently along plaster. The stripes seemed to ripple. In the dimness, the peeling seams widened, slender gaps blacker than the shadow around them. Something pale pressed from behind, only the suggestion of knuckles, of the back of a hand feeling for the edge of a curtain. Ethan sat up, heartbeat ticking in his throat. "Hello?" The word felt unwelcome, too loud for the thin air. The room stilled. The mirror held his question. Somewhere near the headboard, very close to his ear, a sound like a quiet intake of breath answered him, delicate and eager. By 3:17 a.m., the clock's red digits had the authority of a verdict. Ethan abandoned the pretense of sleep. The room had grown colder in a way that was not gradual. It was as though something had suddenly decided warmth was no longer appropriate. His exhale steamed faintly before dissolving, an impossible trick in early autumn. In the mirror, The lamp's light narrowed as if funneled through a throat. The bed, the nightstand, his suitcase, all remained, but their edges seemed thicker, outlined in a darkness that drank more than it concealed. Behind his reflection, the wallpaper stripes had changed direction, listing inward toward the mirror's center, converging like the vanishing lines of a tunnel. He stood, the carpet spongy underfoot, damp with a moisture that had not come from the rain. The closer he drew to the mirror, the louder the murmuring behind the walls became, a layered susurrus of voices too quiet to separate, as though everyone who had ever stayed in room 7 had something important to confess all at once. His reflection met his eyes, but there was no recognition in it now. It watched him the way people watch strangers from the safety of windows, cautious and uninvested. Just behind its shoulder, where there should have been only the bland art print of a lake, a door stood open in the glass. Narrow, unpainted wood, leaded with darkness. Ethan turned. The wall behind him remained resolutely plain. In the mirror, the door waited. The knob twitched. Something moved in that blackness, not stepping forward so much as thickening, as if the dark itself had decided to rise. Long fingers emerged first, not attached to any visible hand, pale and searching. They rested gently along the frame, caressing the boundary. The first knock came from inside the mirror. 3 soft taps, perfectly spaced, reverberated through the room. Not from the physical walls, but with a flat, glassy timbre that seemed to ring directly in his teeth. Ethan's body answered before his mind did. His shoulders bunched, head ducked fractionally, as though bracing for a blow. Behind his reflection, the door opened wider, the dark thick with dust motes that glowed like drowned fireflies. A silhouette tentatively resolved, the outline of a person standing sideways, pressed thin, as if they had been stored between the pages of a book too long. "Don't," Ethan whispered to himself. "Just wait for morning. You're tired. It's a trick of the light." His reflection's lips did not move. They parted, but it was not his voice that seeped out of the glass. It was many voices braided together, all pitched just below a whisper, fraying at the edges. "You signed," they said, words drifting like fog. "You wrote your name. You knew the terms." He stumbled back until the backs of his knees hit the bed. The registration book flashed across his mind, the tangled signatures clawing over each other. Not a record, a petition. "I didn't agree to anything," Ethan snapped, throat tight, anger flickering only because terror needed kindling. A dry rustle shivered through the wallpaper. Along every seam, pale shapes pressed forward, cheeks, the slope of brows, mouths opening in silence, as if the whole room were full of faces trying to turn toward him and failing. "You came alone," the layered voice continued, almost tender. "You let us close. You asked who she was." The silhouette stepped through the door in the mirror and stopped just behind his reflected shoulder, a wrongness in the shape of a woman. No eyes, only 2 deep hollows, as though sight had been scooped out and spent elsewhere. In the real room, something leaned close to his ear, its presence a cold indentation in the air. "I'm the part of this place that remembers," it breathed. "Every name, every night. I watch until you stop leaving." Behind the motel, the storm began again. When the clerk came to check room 7 at dawn, he found the bed made, the lamp off, and the mirror clearer than he remembered, deep and polished. No luggage, no guest. On the counter in the office, the registration book lay open. A fresh signature had been added during the night, written not in ink, but in fine white scratches, like fingernails dragged slow and careful. Ethan Merrow, room 7. The vacancy sign flickered once, then steadied, its red letters beating patiently against the morning light.